you to join me today for this really simple construction. This is one of the easiest constructions to do for a summer crochet top, and we are going to be talking about how to do it in different yarn weights. But I want to start with talking about the supplies that I'm using today on camera. So on camera today, I will be doing the size small in the cottage cotton from Hirschner's. This is a worsted weight yarn. Cotton is great for the summer, but I'm also mixing it up a bit when it comes to the different yarn weights. This is a 60% cotton, 40% acrylic. I really like it for a wearable. This is softer than your dishcloth cotton, so this is great for wearing it throughout the summer. I will also be writing this pattern in different weights yarn, but then also a guide to use any yarn you want if you don't want to concentrate on gauge. Honestly, if you don't want to concentrate on gauge, we can go by measurements versus the gauge and the yarn weights, and you can just go. So the guide will be great for that as well. But I want to give you lots of options and make this such a fun project to work through however you want to work through it. For the worsted weight, you will need a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. This is the dots hooks from We Crochet. All of the sizes will need a yarn needle, a stitch marker, 2 if you want to mark each end of the fabric, a measuring tape, especially to check your gauge if you are going by the stitch counts. And then also if you're going to go by any weight yarn and go by measurements, you'll definitely need the measuring tape. I love these ones that collapse down. They're really fun. And then scissors to fasten off those ends. So there's not a lot of supplies involved. Really just grabbing your yarn, a few notions, and we'll be ready to go. So this is what I will be doing on camera today, but no matter what yarn weight or size you choose, the instructions are going to be very similar. This is a simple construction. We're going to be working up, normally this sometimes is made in 2 panels and then a little bit more seaming. I'm working this one up as one piece. So we're going to work up one piece where we have a section for the neck and only 2 seams down the side. So we're making this even easier to do. So we are going to talk about that in just a minute in this size, but I also want to go over those other yarn weights. Now for the DK weight, which I just want to note, a lot of times Sport and DK can be very similar. When I looked at doing a swatch in Heatherly Sport, it gauged similarly to the Color Fusion DK. So yarn labels, the way that they label them sometimes don't always go by the numbers. Be sure to do gauge swatches and see if the yarn will work. But I use the Premier Color Fusion, which you can also get on Hirschner's, for the DK weight. It's a really fun yarn to use because look at the change of color and you don't have to weave in any ends. I love this blue and having the different shades of blue, so we're adding color texture as well as the texture of the wheat stitch. And if you are using DK, the hook size in the pattern is a 5 millimeter. Now for the fingering weight version of this garment, I went with the Sandscapes from We Crochet for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to show it in a wool. So this is 100% superwash wool, which you could use as a layering piece either in the spring or the fall, and sometimes by a campfire at night. I really don't think that this fingering weight wool is going to add a ton of heat, so you can't experiment with wearing this in the summer. I wanted to try it because it kind of reminds me of Noril, but at a much better price point. The Sandscapes can be found on We Crochet. Like I said, it's a newer yarn I hadn't tried yet, so I wanted to work with it, and I will tell you, it is so fun to work with yarn that changes colors, especially as often as this. It keeps the project really fun. And so if you're doing a fingering weight, I used a 4.5 millimeter hook in the Sandscapes in the pattern. Now, I know we're not supposed to say which child is our favorite, but I can definitely say which yarn is my favorite, and that is this Soho Heavenly Cotton. This is also on the Hirschner's website, and this is a lace weight yarn. This is a fantastic lace weight yarn. It's mostly cotton with a little bit of acrylic, has a little bit of a fuzz to it, so it's great for summers. Do not be afraid of working with a lace weight yarn. It is not harder. It is not harder to work with than any other yarns. And let me tell you, if you could reach through this screen and feel this drape and softness, you would run to get this yarn. But you'd also run to get it for a couple other reasons. One, it's over 500 yards at a price point that's incredible. It's under $5 for a skein of this. So lots of yardage. It doesn't take as many skeins to make this. And the colorways are 6 left, and I say 6 left because this yarn is going to sell out. So if you're seeing this right now, you're going to want to run over. This is the Lilac Frost, and this is Misty Pearl, and there's a few other great colors for spring and summer. and it will sell out. I I hate saying that because I do want it to stick around, and maybe, hey, if we sell it out, I can have a really, really nice chat and ask super nicely for Hirschner's to bring it back, because I want to design a billion garments in this. They have a decent quantity as of the filming of this today, but I also know the second I release it, there's a good chance this will sell out. So if you see this still available, snag it. I would grab it. It is extremely affordable, extremely gorgeous to work with, super soft. As of right now, my top yarn of the year. So it is beautiful. Let's see if we can get it back in eventually. But for this lace weight yarn, I used a 4mm hook. So it's not like I'm using a teeny tiny hook, and it got a beautiful drape, and I know I will be wearing this all season long. Now, after creating a long piece of fabric, which I'm not going to do all those stitch counts on camera, but after creating your long piece of fabric and we have our ribbing at the bottom and the top, we're going to talk about doing that split for the neck. So this is the first panel. This is as wide as the first panel is. This will be 1/4 of your total width of the garment when you seam it and try it on. So this is like 1/4 around your body. With this, we are now going to be creating a slit for the neck. Now, sometimes people for this style of construction will make 2 panels and then seam them together later, but I think it's much easier to go ahead and just create it as one piece and do less seaming later. Now, for the neck on most of the sizes, I've done about 40% of this total length for the neck. You can adjust that like you want. Do not be afraid to adjust the depth of the neck in this next step. So to adjust it, it just means like we're splitting this into 3 sections, and the part where you skip will be the neck. So you're either going to do more or fewer stitches depending on how deep you want that neckline to go or how high up you want it to go. Now, I will say I would err on the side of being like a bit more deep than shallow, because if it turns out you try it on later and you do not like the neckline to be that deep, you can simply grab your yarn needle and seam it together a little bit to bring it to be less deep. But if you have it be too shallow of a drop in the center, your neckline is always going to be high and much harder to open that up after. So just a suggestion. So now I have 7 total repeats happening here, and this is for the size small. And this means I have a total of 28 total rows. And now I'm ready to do the split for the neck. So let me grab my crochet hook. Now to start this row for the split for the neck, I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to, working in the back loop, single crochet 46 stitches. So back loop only, single crochet for 46. Now, after single crocheting in the back loop only for 46 stitches, we are going to do foundation single crochets for 60 and skip 60 stitches. So this is where we're going to create that slit that will be the neck. Now, when it comes to doing foundation single crochets, when we get going, we end up starting those by working the last stitch. But that's a little bit difficult to do here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work in the same stitch I just did to get started. So I'm going to insert the same stitch I last worked, yarn over and pull up a loop. When you do this loop right here is going to be the base of the foundation single crochet. We're going to yarn over and pull through 1, and then yarn over and pull through the remaining 2 stitches on the hook. And that's a foundation single crochet. And to work the next one, now this is where we're going to go back to the base stitches of the previous foundation stitch we made before, going through both loops. So it's like we're getting this V on both sides of the stitch here, at the base and the top. Yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 1, and that creates that base underneath. And then we'll yarn over and pull through 2 to complete that foundation single crochet. So we are just going to keep working those foundation single crochets for a total of 60 stitches, and then we are going to skip 60 stitches on the main fabric. Now, after doing a foundation single crochet of 60, I'm skipping 60 stitches along the edge of the body of this. I've marked that so I can do it quickly on camera. And then I'm going to go to the next stitch after skipping 60 and single crochet in the back loop only for the remaining stitches of this row. And now this is row 1 of the stitch pattern repeat when we start doing this second section. Now let's talk about how to either adjust this neck, or also if you're going by the guide where it's just going by measurements, how to decide, okay, how many stitches am I skipping here? And what we're going to do is we're going to grab a couple stitch markers, and you'll have your first panel and you're going to fold that in half. Or you can also throw this over your shoulders. And the concept of figuring out how long we want this neck to be is simply by folding this in half. So this is the length of our top. So this will sit on our shoulders, and we want the neck to happen here. And you can simply pin this. So pin this about maybe as it's sitting on you. Make sure that the bottoms are lined up. So pin the bottoms together, throw it over your shoulder, and then see, it would actually be the other side now that I think about it. You would pin this side because this is the side that would have the seam, and then see what you like. And then you can go ahead and throw in a stitch marker, and then we're going to make sure that we use the same amount of stitches that we start with. We want to end with those same amount of stitches, so that way it comes to sitting correctly on us. However, if you do not want the neckline to match up perfectly from front to back, so let's say you want the front to come a bit lower and the back to come a bit higher, that's also easy to adjust. And that's where you'll just pin stitch markers where you want them to start and stop. So you could pin a stitch marker up higher for the back of the garment if you don't want it to come so low on the back. And then you're just going to simply skip these stitches in between the stitch markers and work all the rest of the stitches. So it's an easy adjustment to adjust that neckline, no matter if you're going by the guide or the stitch counts and you want to adjust that. Now moving forward with the second panel, we are going to create the same amount of rows in the stitch pattern repeat as we did for panel 1 for panel 2. So I'm going to keep crocheting in that stitch pattern repeat and come back when I have the panel 2 completed. Now that we have our entire panel crocheted, this is a great time to block it before we do any seaming. It's easy to block it flat, and you can block that to the dimensions in the pattern for whatever size that you're using. And then after blocking it, the next steps are to do seaming. And this is where we just finish this off. So we're going to take this from a rectangle to a top. So what we will do is we will fold this in half lengthwise. And then this is going to be the shape of our casual top. We'll want to match up the bottoms, and now we're going to determine what we want for the sleeve armhole opening. Now for the Craft Yarn Council, for the size small, they recommend between 6.5 and 7 inches. So what you can do is you can pin this on to see about where you want to stop seaming, and just using stitch markers going across, measuring down. This is a great time to grab your tape measure, measuring down and pinning. That's for the best fit possible. That way you can just see what you want your arm depth to be, because you may want it lower or higher. This is definitely a personal preference. And then once you've determined that, or the other option is to simply start seaming and keep trying it on to see how many stitches you want to work together. Now, once you're ready to start seaming, I like to keep my slip stitches on the inside of my work. So I'm going to have the wrong side facing out. That way my slip stitches here won't show, but it will help it look seamless on the right side. So now I've folded it in half with the wrong side facing out, or whichever side you want, because honestly this stitch is reversible. So you can pick whichever side you want to face out. And now to start seaming, we have these two edges that we're bringing together. And we're going to chain one that does not count as a stitch. And then we're going to go through the back loop only of the row closest to us, and then the back loop only of the row farthest away from us. Yarn over and slip stitch that together. And we'll do that for as many stitches as we want till we get to the point of that armhole depth. So you can either mark it with a stitch marker or simply start doing this and keep checking it, keep trying it on to see when you want to stop, and then you'll do the same amount of stitches, slip stitching them together on the other side. So what this is doing is it's joining our rows together. This is the inside of our work, and this will be the outside of our work. It's barely noticeable. Now once you have slip stitched all the way up until it's the point that you like, and I do highly recommend trying it on, because you may want to adjust your stitches for the look of how it fits over your arm. Everyone's arms are totally different in sizing, so this is a great way to customize. But you'll want to go ahead and fasten off And then we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So you want to make sure that however many stitches you worked on this side and however many you left unworked, we want to go ahead on the other side, flipping this over. We're going to attach our yarn at the bottom and work it the exact same way. Now to do the second side, I chained one after attaching the yarn, and I'm going to do this one a little bit differently, but you can do it by simply working through both sets of stitches to make the least noticeable seam as possible. Remember, seams are on the side, so it's not a big deal if they show as a seam. Clothing has seams. But for this one, because sometimes I'm super picky, I'm actually going to go into the base of the stitch on the first side and then through the back loop. Now this will create a little bit of extra fabric on the seam there, but I just want to show it as an option. I'm going to get a few stitches in and then I can really zoom in and show you what's happening here. So once again, you can simply single crochet these stitches together. You can do the back loop like before. It will be a little bit more noticeable, but if you want to go into the base of the first row, so I'm talking like along the line at the bottom of the stitch, so going into the base of that stitch and then the back loop of the row farthest away and slip stitch together. Now this does create a little bit more fabric along that seam, but it does hide it a bit better on the other side. So if you want to do it this way, you can. I love making seams the least noticeable as possible. So that's what I'm going to do for this side. And this is the worsted weight. This is the thickest yarn. This won't be as big of a deal on the other yarn sizes. So like I said, in the bottom of the stitch, so at the base of the stitch of the first row and through the back loop of the row farthest away. I'm going to do a few more stitches here and show you what this seam looks like on the other side. Now, once you've worked that second seam, you can fasten off and it's time to weave in all of these ends. And then once you've woven those ends, your garment is complete. I'm going to flip this back to the right side out. And now we can see that we've got these seams on the side. They're really not that noticeable. And this is ready to wear. Now you'll see while I made this garment 4 times, each one is completely unique from the other, even though it is the same stitch. These are different weights and they're also different lengths and different neck drops. I just loved trying it out with and adjusting for different looks. And now I have 4 amazing tops to wear all season long. Thank you so much for joining me for this really fun and super simple wheat stitch top. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and come back for more fun projects soon.